When did you finally realize staying loyal to your parents was hurting you? I kept offending them, even when it hurt. I thought that's what a good son does. But the day I saw what they did behind my back, that's when I stopped calling them family. I used to think every family had their issues, that what we had was just a little more complicated, a little more strained, but still love at the core. My mom used to say, no one will ever protect you like your parents. And for a long time, I believed that, even when I was lying to friends about why I couldn't come over. Even when I was making excuses for the bruises or covering for the yelling late at night, I believed loyalty was love, and love meant taking the hits and keeping quiet. I grew up in a house where silence was safety, where speaking up was the same as betrayal. My dad didn't hit often, but when he did, it was methodical, precise. It wasn't rage, it was discipline, that's what he called it. A man's got to keep order, he said, otherwise the world will eat you alive. My mother, she never raised her voice, never stopped him either. She just cleaned up after, offered me tea and said things like, you know how he gets, don't provoke. I didn't know this wasn't normal until I was about 14 and I spent a weekend at my friend Jaden's place. His mom hugged him. His dad asked about his day. No one flinched when the front door opened. I came home that Sunday evening and the silence in our house felt different, heavier, like something I'd been breathing for years and only now realized was poison. But I still stayed loyal, even when I got old enough to move out, even when they called me names for going to college out of state, even when they told people I was too sensitive or brainwashed. I'd still defend them. They just had it rough, I'd say. They didn't know better. I told myself that if I succeeded, if I did well enough, maybe they'd soften, maybe I'd earn something better from them. But you can't earn love from people who think control is love. You can't teach people to see you differently if they've decided you're just an extension of their failures. Things finally started to crack open 2 years ago. I was 27. I just moved back to my hometown for work, against my better judgment. My mom acted thrilled. Our boy's home, she told everyone. My dad didn't say much, just nodded like I was furniture being returned. I tried to keep my distance. I didn't move in with them, God. No, but I came by sometimes, birthdays, holidays, the occasional Sunday. Then one night I stopped by unannounced. I'd forgotten my old guitar, something I left in their attic when I moved out for college. My plan was to grab it quickly and get out. The house was quiet, too quiet. I assumed they were asleep, but when I walked past the den, I saw light flickering under the door. I paused, thought about knocking. Then I heard my name. I couldn't make out the whole sentence, but I heard my name and the word liability. I stood there, heart thudding, listening to my own parents talk about me like I was a burden. Not just in the usual he thinks he's better than us way. No, they were talking finances, insurance. If he really knew what we did, my mother said, he'd never come back. My dad laughed, not like a joke, like a release. Doesn't matter, he never will. He still thinks we love him. I froze. Something sank in me, deep and hard and final. I wanted to walk away, pretend I didn't hear. But something made me open that door. Maybe I needed to see their faces. Maybe I needed to stop protecting ghosts. When they saw me, they didn't look shocked. My mom just blinked. My dad said, you shouldn't sneak around, boy. And then they turned off the TV, just like that, no explanation, no guilt. I left without saying a word. That night I barely slept. My mind ran through every memory, every weird moment I'd brushed off. Like the way my name was never on any family documents. Like how my college tuition was never discussed. But my uncle, who died mysteriously when I was 10, had a trust fund that suddenly disappeared. Like how every time I asked questions about our extended family, the subject changed. The next day, I went to the county records office, asked for any documentation related to our house, inheritance, death records. The clerk was nice. Too nice. She gave me a folder with my parents' names flagged on 3 different probate cases, 3 deaths, 3 payouts, my uncle, my grandfather, and someone named Rebecca. I didn't know a Rebecca. The death date was 1 year before I was born. Cause of death, accidental overdose. But the photo attached looked eerily familiar. I took a picture with my phone and showed it to my mom a week later. Asked who it was. She smiled, said I was digging in places that didn't matter. I asked again, firmer. Who is she? My mom's smile faded. She looked at me the way people look at pets that bit a child, cold, final. Someone who got too curious, she said. That was the last time I ever sat across from her. I moved 2 states away, changed my number, and blocked everything. I hired someone, a private investigator, because part of me still needed to know, who was Rebecca, what was in that insurance policy? Was I even their biological son, or was I something else? The PI's report came back 6 months later. Most of it was black and white. Yes, my parents had taken out insurance policies on every close relative who died under sudden or ambiguous circumstances. Yes, they'd profited. No charges were ever filed, but the last page had something I wasn't ready for. A birth certificate, mine, or rather someone else's, born in the same year, same month, different name. Rebecca was listed as the mother, father unknown. The certificate was marked void in red, a note scribbled in the margin, custody transferred. New ID issued under sealed court order. I stared at it for a long time. I don't know what's worse, the idea that they might have taken me in to cover something up, or the idea that they did love me, just on their terms, just enough to use. I haven't spoken to them since. I don't plan to. People ask why I don't visit my family anymore, why I go quiet when someone mentions their parents. I just say, not everyone has the same definition of love. But the truth, I stopped calling them family the moment I realized love shouldn't feel like a debt I can never repay, and loyalty shouldn't come with conditions I never agreed to. After that, things didn't go back to normal, not in my head, not in my day-to-day life. I became obsessed with documents, with old records. I'd never cared about paper trails before, but now I was digging through every birth certificate, obituary, and insurance record I could legally request. I rented a P.O. box 2 towns over just to keep my search quiet. I even used my middle name to avoid attention. Part of me knew I was spiraling, but it didn't feel like madness. It felt like clarity, like I'd spent my whole life underwater and was finally breathing air for the first time. Every time I found a new name tied to my parents, I built a timeline, laid it all out on the floor of my apartment. Names, dates, lines of connection. My living room looked like a conspiracy theory movie, but it wasn't theory anymore. It was fact. Documented, signed, notarized. They always stayed just inside the lines. Enough ambiguity, enough accidents, enough grief to pass as bad luck. I started to notice patterns. People disappeared right after changing their wills. Life insurance policies were updated just weeks before sudden deaths. And in almost every case, my parents had served as witnesses, emergency contacts, or next of kin. Even when it didn't make sense. Even when there were closer relatives alive, I kept asking myself how no one else had seen it, how they'd gotten away with it for so long, but I already knew the answer. People don't want to believe that kind of evil can wear a friendly face. They don't want to think the nice couple next door, the ones who host barbecues and go to church and send Christmas cards, could be predators, especially when the victims are quiet, or isolated, or already buried. The more I learned, the less I slept. I started double-locking my doors, installing cameras, carrying a recorder in my jacket pocket, just in case. I didn't think they'd come after me, not really. But I also didn't know what they were capable of. And the not knowing was worse. One night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail, just a missed call. The next day, another. Then an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single photo, a shot of me sitting in my car outside the records office. Nothing threatening, no note, but the message was clear. We see you. I stared at that photo for a long time, thought about calling the police. But what would I say? That my parents might have sent me a picture of myself, that they might be connected to old deaths that no one ever investigated. I knew how that would sound. I put the photo in a drawer and started looking for apartments in other states. I told myself I'd drop it, that I'd start over again. And I almost did, until I got the email, no sender, just a subject line, "You're not the first." The message was short, no greeting, no signature. Just, "I saw your name on a court record search. I knew your mother, she ruined my family. If you want to talk, meet me at the old playground on Route 9 Thursday, 7 p.m. I stared at the screen, read it 6 times. There was no trace of who sent it, but it didn't feel fake, it felt desperate. I debated for days, made excuses, but the curiosity burned hotter than the fear. So I went. Thursday, 7 p.m. The playground was empty, grass overgrown, swings rusted, one of the seesaws broken. I waited by the old slide. 5 minutes, 10. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps. A woman, maybe mid-50s, nervous, clutching a manila folder like it was life support. She looked at me like she recognized me. "You look like him," she said. "Who?" I asked. Her eyes went distant. "My brother." She handed me the folder. They said it was suicide. It wasn't. I opened the folder slowly. Inside were pages of emails, scans of letters, copies of old checks with my parents' signatures. A photo of a man who looked like me, but older, sharper around the edges. "He was with your mom for a while," she said. I think she used him for something, insurance, access, I don't know, but after he died, everything went to her, even though they weren't married. She forged documents, and no one questioned it. I tried to ask her more, but she backed away. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "They watch people, they make it look natural." She looked at me hard. "You're not crazy, just careful." And then she left. I haven't seen her since. I've tried reaching out, no response. I took the folder and added it to the wall. Now the pattern wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. Names, faces, trails of destruction, but always the same outcome, my parents walking away untouched. I started to wonder if they had help. Someone on the inside. A lawyer, a banker, someone who helped them navigate the legal maze. Then I found something that made my stomach turn. A notarized document in a file from 1996, a power of attorney form. The notary's name was familiar. I Googled it. Found an obituary. Died in 2003, officially heart failure. But the day before his death, he'd filed a complaint with the state licensing board against my father. The file was incomplete. No resolution. But it was enough to make me realize I'd barely scratched the surface. I sent everything I had to a journalist friend I trusted. Someone who'd covered corruption cases. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to start sniffing. They agreed to look into it, said they'd be careful, said they'd encrypt everything. A week later, they stopped answering my calls. Then their number was disconnected. I don't know what happened, I still don't. I want to believe they just moved on. Got busy. But deep down, I don't, and that's the thing. Once you see the cracks, you start to question everything. Every silence feels loaded, every kindness feels staged. I look at my own reflection and wonder who I am if I was raised in a house built on lies. I haven't found all the answers. I don't know the full truth, but I know enough. Enough to understand that my parents aren't what they seem, that the love I thought I had was a leash, that loyalty in their world meant silence and complicity. And I'm done being silent. I didn't sleep much after that. Not because I was afraid, at least not in the traditional sense. It was more like I was standing too close to something rotten, like the smell was always there, but now I couldn't ignore it. I kept thinking about what that woman had said. "You look like him." Her brother, my mother's name on forged documents, another payout, another person gone. And then I remembered something, a moment I hadn't thought about in over a decade. I was 17, sitting in the garage, going through some old boxes. I found a photo album wedged behind a crate of Christmas decorations. Inside there was a picture of my mom, younger, her hair longer. She was holding a baby, but not me. The date on the back said 1988. I was born in 1993. I remember asking her about it, just casually, like teenagers do. And she snapped, not in a loud way, not even angry, just sharp. "That was a patient's baby," she said. "I used to work in the hospital nursery." Don't go snooping. I hadn't thought about it again until now. But that photo, that moment, felt different with everything I knew. She never worked in healthcare, not once. I'd seen her resume. She worked at a county clerk's office from age 23 until she retired early. Why lie, why fake a job, unless the baby was real? And hers, and maybe not alive anymore. I tried to find the photo album again, drove back to the old house. They'd sold it, but I knew the realtor. Said I was doing personal family archiving. She let me in for an hour. I dug through everything, the attic, the garage, every closet and drawer. But the album was gone. Not just gone, erased, like it had never existed. I started to wonder what else had been wiped. I asked my aunt, the only relative still alive on my father's side, about our family tree. She laughed, said she didn't know much, that my parents didn't talk about the past. Then she said something odd. "I remember your dad used to get letters, big ones, manila envelopes. Always looked stressed after reading them." "When was this?" I asked. "Oh, years ago, maybe around when you were born. Then they just stopped, like someone went away." I tried to track down who might have sent those letters, no luck. But something else did surface. A death certificate from 1992, a woman named Marla Winslow, no listed relatives, cause of death unconfirmed. She was 23 and had once filed a restraining order against a John D. Clark, my father's full name. It was sealed, of course, but the fact that it existed, my hands shook when I printed it. Her photo was blurry. But there was something in her expression, something that felt familiar. I brought it to a contact I'd made, a woman who worked quietly in records for a private firm. She pulled up archived court logs, said most of the Winslow case had been sealed, but she did find something, a note in a case file that said possible infant involvement, unconfirmed, no documentation, infant, same year I was born. Same woman who tried to file a legal order against my father. I felt sick. I don't know what happened to Marla, but the dates, the missing birth records, the sudden adoption mentioned in my PI's report, it was stacking up. Everything pointed to the possibility that I wasn't just lied to. I was stolen, or at least hidden from a truth that had died with someone else. I started to get headaches, not metaphorical ones, real pulsing migraines that came whenever I got too close to something I couldn't explain. My therapist, one of the few people I could still trust, said I was dealing with core identity collapse. That when everything you believed about your origin is shattered, the mind tries to rebuild. But I wasn't interested in rebuilding. I wanted facts. I wanted names. I started emailing cold case forums, not directly about me, just general requests, aliases, looking for anyone who remembered a woman named Marla in the early 90s. I got one reply, just one. A man named Curtis. Said he was her neighbor. Said she disappeared after giving birth, that one day she was walking around the complex, heavily pregnant, and then, gone, no baby, no goodbye, just a unit emptied overnight. He said he always thought someone had taken her. She was scared, he wrote. I remember her looking over her shoulder a lot. Told me once she was being followed. I asked him if she ever mentioned a man named John. He went quiet for 3 days, then responded, yes. She called him the clerk. Said he used to come into her job and ask weird questions. Told me if anything ever happened, to tell people she didn't leave by choice. My chest tightened. I asked him if he still had anything, letters, photos, anything. He said he'd look. That was 3 months ago. I haven't heard back since. I tried calling, disconnected. His Reddit account deleted, email bounced back, like he never existed. I don't know if he got spooked or if someone got to him, but it scared me more than I wanted to admit. I started sleeping with the lights on. I installed encryption on every device I owned. I stopped posting anything under my real name. Even with all that, I still couldn't stop digging. I started searching hospital records, birth announcements, police logs, anything from early 1993. Eventually, I found a single article article in a tiny local paper. Just a two-paragraph blurb, unidentified woman found dead in county riverbank. No ID, apparent suicide. Infant clothing found nearby. Police investigating. No follow-up article, no resolution. I called the paper, asked if they had archives. They said that years' logs had been water damaged. We lost half the physical copies, the intern told me. Of course they did. I printed the blurb anyway. It's on my wall, next to the photo of Marla, next to the fake birth certificate, next to the photo of me outside the records office. Every piece fits, almost, but there's still one blank space, one piece that keeps me up at night, one envelope, one manila folder. One truth I've never seen, the adoption record. The one that proves who I am, or who I'm not. My parents, if I can still call them that, had connections, not legal ones, not like politicians, but small, quiet, deeply embedded ones. People who owed them favors. People who helped with paperwork, made things vanish. And I've come to believe that somewhere, buried in an old courthouse basement or locked away in a bank vault, is the final truth, a single file, a real birth certificate. Maybe even a name I've never heard. I haven't found it yet, but I'm close, closer than I've ever been. And I know this, the deeper I dig, the more they watch. I see it in the way strangers glance too long, the way my mail sometimes arrives already opened, the way my old accounts lock me out with no warning. They don't want this coming out, and I don't think they're done with me yet. But I also know this, I'm not done either. I started keeping a backup drive in a fireproof box, one in a safety deposit box, one with a friend out of state, someone I trust. I told them, if anything happens to me, leak this to every journalist you can find. They thought I was being paranoid. Maybe I am, but paranoia doesn't mean you're wrong. I stopped using my own Wi-Fi, used only burner phones, printed copies of everything. I even started recording my own voice, nightly logs, just in case I disappeared, someone would know where I'd left off. I became the kind of person I used to laugh at. But the more I looked, the more I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been. There were patterns I hadn't seen at first. People connected to my parents, loosely, distantly, but they all had something in common: legal transitions, property transfers, life insurance, adoptions, power of attorney. It was like my parents weren't just opportunists, they were orchestrators, quietly manipulating vulnerable people. And the worst part, most of them didn't even realize it. I found one woman, Angela. Her mother had died when she was 6. Left everything to a cousin. That cousin shared a P.O. box with my father for 4 years. The address was listed under a dummy LLC. When I contacted her, Angela had no idea. She thought the cousin had just been good with money. She broke down when I showed her the documents. Said she always thought something was off, but no one ever listened. I started to see my parents less like parents and more like social predators. They built networks. They exploited weakness. They thrived in the silence. My whole life I'd thought they were just broken people doing their best. Now I realized they knew exactly what they were doing. They counted on people like me, people who defended them, excused them, shielded them. That was the cost of their love, loyalty, secrecy, complicity. One night, I went through an old lockbox I hadn't touched in years. It was filled with childhood stuff: medals, drawings, report cards. At the bottom was a yellowed envelope. No writing. Inside a folded piece of paper, one sentence typed, "You are not theirs." No name, no date, nothing else. Just that. The paper felt old. The kind that cracks at the edges when folded. I don't know who wrote it, I don't know when it was put there, but it wasn't in my handwriting and it wasn't in theirs. I stared at it for hours. Then I started to cry, not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen. Someone out there knew, had tried to warn me. I don't know if they're alive. I don't know if they were watching me grow up from a distance. But that one sentence carried more love than anything my parents had ever said to me. I began to dig deeper into the year I was born. I found a midwife, long retired, who had worked in the area. She didn't remember names, but when I showed her Marla's photo, she went pale. "I delivered that baby," she said. "It was a boy, healthy." But she was terrified, said someone was coming to take him. I asked her if there were records. She shook her head. Back then, people paid cash. No ID, no paperwork. She didn't want him on any system, said she had to hide him. Then she said something that still haunts me. I remember holding that boy. He had the saddest eyes I'd ever seen on a newborn. I couldn't speak. I just nodded and left. I still don't know if that boy was me, but the pieces fit. The dates, the fear, the lack of paperwork, the voided certificate, the fact that my parents had connections and vital records. I started writing everything down, a full chronology. Not just for me, but in case anyone ever needed to understand how this happened, how people like my parents operate. It wasn't just cruelty, it was craftsmanship. They knew how to erase, how to substitute, how to rewrite a person's life from the outside in. One night, I got a call, blocked number, no voice, just breathing. I listened, said nothing. Then a click. I played it back 10 times. On the 7th replay, I noticed something faint in the background. A radio. News. Just a snippet. County authorities say the investigation remains open. I tracked the audio to a local station. Found the full broadcast. The story was about a reopened case, an old missing persons file from the 90s. A man named Louis Kemper, former notary, died under strange circumstances, had filed complaints about forged documents months before his death. My father's name was mentioned once, buried in a paragraph listed as a former client. That was enough. I called the station, spoke to the producer, told them I had documents, timelines, proof. They asked me to come in, we set a date. 3 days later, their office burned down. Electrical fire, they said. No casualties, thank God. But the server room was destroyed. I didn't believe in coincidence anymore. Not when every time I got close to exposure, something conveniently erased it. I stopped reaching out, stopped trusting strangers. I began focusing on one goal, locate the sealed court order. The one that changed my identity. I found a contact through a friend of a friend, someone who worked in legal archives. I paid cash. They gave me 3 hours access to a restricted records room, deep basement, no cameras. I went through dozens of boxes. Finally, in a misfiled stack marked Miscellaneous Wards 1993, I found it. A sealed envelope, my name, or rather, the name I was given. Baby Boy Winslow. Inside was the order, judge's signature. Transfer of custody to anonymous guardianship due to unfit maternal conditions. But there was something else, a second sheet marked Addendum. It listed a contact, John D. Clark. My father, not a guardian, not a legal foster, just a contact, no adoption agency, no state oversight, just a clerk in a closed case. I took photos of everything. I didn't steal it, I knew better. But I walked out with enough to blow the whole thing open. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at the wall. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even scared. I was hollow, like every memory I had was built on a foundation of fraud. I wondered if they'd ever really loved me, or if I was just another asset, another silence bought and sold. The next morning, I called a lawyer, quiet, experienced. He looked at everything, read slowly, then leaned back and said, "You're sitting on a war. Be sure you want to fight it." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. Some days I still wake up and want to pretend I don't know any of this. Want to believe my parents are just damaged people, not architects of other people's destruction. But then I remember the envelope. The message, the photo of me that someone took without permission. And I remember, loyalty shouldn't come with fear, love shouldn't feel like leverage. I don't know what I'll do next, but I know this much, I'm not going back, not to the house, not to the people who wore the word family like a mask. I've seen too much, and now that I see them clearly, I can't unsee it. A week after that meeting with the lawyer, I started getting mail again. Not just bills or junk, but things that didn't make sense. A birthday card with no return address. No message, just the words to our son in handwriting I didn't recognize. A stack of printed photos of me at different ages, clearly scanned from old originals. One of them I'd never seen before. I was a baby, maybe 1 year old, sitting on a picnic blanket next to a woman whose face had been scratched out with a pen. Another photo from the same set had Marla's unmistakable eyes, and she was holding me. I stared at that one the longest. The envelope had no fingerprint, no DNA. Nothing traceable, just quiet proof that someone was watching me again. Or worse, someone was trying to remind me that no matter how far I thought I'd come, they were always one step ahead. The lawyer offered to go public. Said he could build a case, start a civil suit, maybe even pressure law enforcement to open a deeper investigation. I told him to wait. I wasn't ready. I needed one more thing, a person. A name, a witness, and somehow, as if the universe had a cruel sense of timing. That's when I got the second email. The subject line just said, "She's still alive." The body of the email had an address. No explanation. No sender. Just, "She's been in the system for years. Ask for Becca W." At first I thought it was a prank, or a trap, but something about it stuck with me. The name, Becca, the abbreviation. W. Winslow, was it possible? I drove 4 hours to the address, a residential care facility tucked behind a county clinic. I used a fake name, said I was looking into elder abuse statistics for a university project. The woman at the front desk barely looked up. "We don't give out names of residents. What about initials?" I asked, just to verify a report. She frowned. "We have a Becca W, but she's..." Her voice trailed off. "She's not well, doesn't speak, hasn't in years." "Can I see her?" I said before I could stop myself. She gave me a look, then shrugged. 5 minutes. She led me to a small room, white walls, single bed, pale sunlight through dusty blinds. And there she was, an older woman. Gray hair, thin, wrists like twigs, eyes clouded but still, aware. As soon as I stepped inside, she looked at me. No hesitation, no confusion, just recognition. I froze, my heart slammed against my ribs. "Becca," I said. She blinked, no reply. I sat down across from her. "Do you know who I am?" She didn't speak, just reached slowly, painfully toward the table. There was a notepad. She picked up the pen with shaking fingers. It took her a full minute to write one word. Run. My blood ran cold. "Why?" I whispered. "Are they watching me?" She nodded. Wrote again. "Not safe." I wanted to ask more. I had so many questions. Was she Marla's sister? Did she know what happened in 1993? Was she the one who sent the photo, but the nurse knocked? "Time's up." I begged for more time, was refused. When I turned back, Becca was crying, silently. She mouthed something, over and over. I couldn't hear it, could barely read her lips, but I think it was baby. I left that room shaken to my core. If she was telling the truth, if she really knew what happened, then the trail wasn't cold. It was still burning. I tried coming back the next day. She'd been transferred. Moved to another facility, they said. No forwarding information. I searched, called, nothing. Another ghost, another voice vanished. I kept digging. There was one name I hadn't tried yet. Someone my father used to mention at family dinners when I was a kid. Uncle Tony, he'd say, from the Union. I never met him. There were no photos. But he was always brought up as the guy who made things happen. I tracked down records for every Anthony Clark in 3 states. Eventually found one, Anthony Marcus Clark, who died in 1999 under suspicious circumstances. Single car accident. Case ruled an unfortunate mechanical failure. But the toxicology report showed no alcohol, no drugs. Just an odd note, driver's side seatbelt was cut post-impact. I found the mechanic who'd inspected the wreck. He was retired now. Living in Arizona. When I called him, he was confused at first. But when I said the name Clark, he went quiet. I was told to let that one go, he said. Told by who? State trooper. But the trooper never filed a report, just showed up and said it was political. Was there anything strange about the car? I asked. Yeah, the steering column had been tampered with, but no fingerprints. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. I thanked him, hung up. Sat on my kitchen floor for an hour trying to breathe. My Uncle Tony had been silenced. Probably because he knew too much. Probably because he helped too much. And now he was gone. Everything around my parents, everyone who touched their inner circle, ended up ruined, missing, or dead. And yet they still lived quietly in their little house like nothing ever happened. Church every Sunday, groceries on Wednesdays, lawn mowed, smiles at neighbors. Monsters in plain sight. I knew if I took them to court, they'd deny everything. They had no digital trail, no confessions, just carefully controlled chaos. But if I could prove one death, one fraud, one forged document, I could break the illusion. I could start something bigger. I started building the case, quietly, through back channels. I reached out to people like Angela, the woman whose inheritance was stolen. I found 2 more just like her. One of them, a man in his 60s named Neil, had lost his brother in a mysterious fire. The house was owned by my parents at the time, though on paper. It was listed under a trust. They said it was electrical, Neil told me. But the fire chief said there were accelerants. Why wasn't it investigated? Because your dad used to work with the fire chief, old family friend. Neil agreed to testify, if it came to that. So did Angela. So did a third woman, Carla, who claimed my mother manipulated her into signing away power of attorney for her father. I was 19, Carla said. I didn't know what I was signing. She told me it was for simplifying paperwork. A month later, my dad was in a coma, and she controlled everything. All these people, all these shattered lives, and yet not a single police report stuck. My parents were artists of erasure. They didn't need force. They used influence, familiarity, trust. And people like me, people who defended them, covered for them, loved them, I used to think they raised me because they wanted a child. Now I believe they raised me because they needed someone quiet, someone grateful, someone who wouldn't ask questions. But I'm not that person anymore. I don't know if this is justice. I don't know if justice even exists for people like them. But I kept going. Quietly, carefully. I filed anonymous tips to 3 different state offices, submitting documents with no names attached. I used throwaway emails and VPNs. I encrypted every file 10 different ways. At night, I walked circles around my apartment, reading and rereading everything I'd gathered. I imagined what it would feel like to say it out loud in a courtroom. I imagined them looking at me, realizing I'd unraveled it all. But in every version of that fantasy, I always woke up before the verdict. The truth is, I'm tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind that settles deep in your bones when you've been holding someone else's lies for too long. I don't think I'll ever get back the version of myself that existed before all this. Before the photo, before the email, before that night, I heard them talking like I was just a file in a drawer. A liability. A thing they managed, not a person they raised. Sometimes I still ask myself, did they ever love me? Were there moments, even small ones, where it was real? I want to believe that. I want to believe my childhood wasn't all manipulation and design. But then I remember the quiet threats, the way my dad never apologized, only justified, the way my mom used guilt like a leash, the way they always made me feel like love had to be earned, and that loyalty was the only currency they respected. I remember the holidays where joy felt scheduled, the birthdays that were more about photo ops than connection. I remember the emptiness in our home, so clean, so orderly, and yet never safe. And I remember what my mother said the last time we spoke, when I asked her who Becca was. Someone who got too curious. That sentence plays in my head more than I'd like to admit. Some nights I can still hear her voice, soft, controlled, dangerous. My lawyer says we have enough to open civil proceedings, maybe even trigger a state-level audit. He's cautious, doesn't want me getting my hopes up. says families like mine are like black holes of paperwork. But he believes me now, that's something. The people I've spoken to, the other victims, they're scared. Some don't want to be named, some are still unraveling their own versions of the story, but they're watching, waiting, quietly standing behind me. I don't think I'm a hero. I'm not brave. I'm just a man who got tired of pretending that pain was normal, that betrayal was just family stuff. I'm still unraveling it all. I still don't know exactly who I am, whether I was stolen or just used, whether Becca was my aunt, my cousin, my witness, or something else entirely. I still don't know what really happened to Marla, if she died giving birth or if someone helped make her disappear. I don't know how many people they hurt. I don't know if they'll ever pay for it, but I do know this, the spell is broken. I don't owe them silence anymore. I don't owe them love or loyalty or explanations. And if they come for me, legally, emotionally, any way they can, I'm ready. I've backed everything up, sent copies to 3 different people. If you're reading this, maybe one day it means something happened to me. Maybe someone leaked this, or posted it where people could see, or maybe I just needed to finally say it out loud, somewhere. To someone, I kept defending them, even when it hurt. I thought that's what a good son does. But the day I saw what they did behind my back, that's when I stopped calling them family. And now I call them what they are, dangerous, cold, calculated. And soon, if there's any justice left in this world, exposed.